Exclusive contracted novel by Feilu Novel Network. I, Wudang Wang Ye, have multiple fiancés at the beginning. Through the journey of comprehensive martial arts, become the junior martial uncle of Wudang, and activate the divine level playing system, starting as Wang Ye under one person. From then on, a lazy and supreme Taoist named Wang appeared in Wudang.Tai Chi Cloud Hand, Turtle Body Fly, Luan Jin Tu, He Che, Feng Hou Qi Men, Liu Ku Xian Jiu, Qi Body Source and Flow, 8 strange techniques. Not only that, but also an extra fiancé out of thin air. When the one dressed in green approached the door, Wang was also bewildered. Wang Ye. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. If you can persuade him in Chapter 1, I will ensure that you are safe and sound. You are listening at novelfull.audio. If you can persuade him in Chapter 1, I will ensure that you are safe and sound. Wudang Mountain, the golden summit of Taihe Palace. Boom! A thunderous roar echoed through the sky like a sky shattering and earth shattering. Amidst the rolling black clouds, thunder kept piercing through the sky. Thunder and lightning are like swords, cutting straight at the golden summit. Its momentum is extremely fierce, as if destroying the world. In the blink of an eye, thunder surged above the golden roof, and infinite lightning reflected on it, revealing its true form. What's even more astonishing is that beneath the golden roof of the Taihe Palace, there is a young man in white, holding a knife in his arms and keeping his eyes tightly closed. The thunderous roar of thunder and snakes in the sky cannot have any impact on it. Just as a thunderbolt shone down on the golden roof again, the young man in white suddenly opened his eyes and took a sudden step, flying several feet into the air and facing the falling thunder. Zhenzhen, the sound of the knife's roar exploded, and a snow-white blade light flashed past like a piece of practice. The blade light, like water and ice, suddenly intersected with the thunder. Bang! In the next moment, the young man flew backwards, and his long sword, as bright as moonlight, also flew out of his hand. His body kept flickering with thunder and snakes, but strangely, the young man seemed not to have suffered any damage, but his whole body was slightly burnt black. Originally, he looked like a handsome young master, but now he has turned into a little beggar. The young man sat on the blue brick floor, seeming somewhat discouraged, with a look of regret on his face. The thunder-slaying saber. It has only a form, but no intention. When the young people collapsed and let the drifting rainstorm hit them, a warm voice suddenly came from them. The words were not grand, but they seemed to have the power to pierce through gold and crack stones, suppressing the thunderous roar. The rain curtain was majestic, and it fell clearly in the ears of the young man in white. The young man in white didn't get angry when he heard the sound, but instead sneered, "If you want to come over and see me, come over. You're really not a man. Step on it." On a small path not far from the Taihe Palace, a Taoist dressed in a blue Taoist robe slowly walked towards him. The pace was slow, but each step seemed to step on the heartstrings of a person, causing the young man in white to feel even more unhappy and infuriating. What's going on? Taoist Zhang, who wants to cultivate a true immortal, is preparing to teach me for the sake of my aunt's face. The young man in white exerted a slight force and then lifted himself from the ground, sneering at the Taoist in green. The crown prince's practice is impossible. The young Taoist, who had a handsome face, was not angry at the words of the young man in white, who was holding a knife and carrying a stick. He picked up the precious sword that had fallen on the side and tried to build a smile. "Oh. Do you mean you can do it?" The young man in white became even more angry and sarcastically said, "Then come on, if you can't cut the thunder, I want you to look good." The power of heaven and earth is so terrifying that relying solely on small paths is not enough. The young Taoist's eyebrows and eyes were full of flattery, and he handed his precious sword to the young man in white, saying, but he didn't want to let go of his weapon and be backfired by the thunder. However, on the other hand, the Crown Prince's golden silkworm armor is truly amazing. It can avoid water and fire, and block lightning. The young man in white suddenly stood up and raised his eyebrows. Originally, he had a slight rascal all over his body, and his lazy temperament suddenly disappeared. Instead, he was replaced by a true sense of coolness. Isn't Zhang only cultivating immortals and not practicing martial arts? Since your tone is so loud, let's cut a knife and show it to this crown prince. As he spoke, the young man in white lifted the young Taoist and threw him towards a thunderbolt that fell on the golden roof. The young Taoist facing the thunder let out a long sigh, his eyes flickering as if he had made some decision. Immediately, he gripped the precious sword with the words, Yuqing, engraved on it tightly in his palm, and slashed diagonally towards the thunder. Boom boom. A silver-white sword burst from the young Taoist's hand, exploding. At the next moment, the blade of light flashed past and pointed out that it was undoubtedly the middle of the thunder that fell. The thunder, which was originally like a snake, was suddenly torn apart. Although it was only for a moment, it solidly cut off the falling thunder. The young man in white looked at this scene in extreme shock. The shock brought to him by this knife was truly indescribable. With that knife, he even felt like his soul and body were torn apart. What surprised him even more was that the Taoist, who claimed to be cultivating immortals, was only responsible for growing vegetables, grazing, and feeding pigs on Wudang Mountain, but he actually cut off the thunder. The young Taoist slowly landed on the ground and handed the Yuqing Baodao back to the young man's hand. A house that accumulates good will have afterglow, and a house that accumulates evil will have afterglow. What a Yuqing, what a disaster. These swords are among the top of the world's famous swords, truly worthy of being the weapons of the crown prince. It's amazing. The young Taoist had a plain expression on his face, giving a thumbs up as if he had done something very ordinary, and even commented on his precious sword, full of flattery. Unexpectedly, the young man in white did not appreciate it and showed even greater anger on his face. He kicked the young Taoist unsteadily with a flying kick. Zhang Daoling, dare you tell me that you only cultivate immortals without practicing martial arts? The young man in white became even more angry and chased after him to catch up. Since this free-spirited Taoist knows martial arts, why not go down the mountain? Unfortunately, it caused my aunt to wait hard. At this moment, the thunderstorm had begun to slowly fade away, and Zhang Daoling didn't get angry even after being kicked a few times, but his face was full of innocence. The heavens still pity me. I really don't know how to fight. On this mountain, I have read all the Taoist scriptures and practiced all the true Dharma. The Crown Prince misunderstood, the Crown Prince misunderstood. This is what the young junior brother of mine used to say. After hearing a few words, I casually chopped it out. The young man in white felt a bit disheartened upon hearing this. He had been up the mountain for a long time, practicing for more than half a year, but had not yet achieved any success. How could this guy say that he was just casually stabbed? Anger came from the heart, and the young man in white chased Zhang Daoling with punches and kicks. If someone else is present at this moment, they will definitely be shocked. One of these two has a high ranking in Wudang Mountain and has been appointed as the next Wudang leader. The other was the son of the only unfettered king in the great Qin Empire, Prince Bai Qi of Zhenzhen, and one of the most precious individuals in the world today, Bai Xiaoyan. Both of these individuals have extraordinary identities, yet they are now chasing and playing around like children. The two of them chased for a while, and Bai Xiaoyan kept panting heavily, seemingly unable to catch up. His anger dissipated, and he sat on a green brick without any regard for his image. The Crown Prince is tired from fighting. Why don't we take a break? Zhang Daoling's face was full of caution, probing and saying. In Zhang Daoling's view, as the most esteemed group of people in the world and the son of two Baichi, who relied on his own efforts to suppress major dynasties and the entire martial arts world, he did not want to be a playboy prince who was obscene and seductive, but instead went to Wudang Mountain to practice martial arts. Isn't this seeking hardship for himself? Bai Xiaoyan didn't even bother to look back, so he just spoke up and said, "You cattle herder, hurry up and get out of here. Don't be fooled by me here. Even if I can't practice martial arts, I still have more than enough to deal with you." Zhang Daoling cautiously took a few steps back, as if he was really afraid that this young master would suddenly start beating him. Seeing the young Taoist's reaction, Bai Xiaoyan looked even more disdainful and said, "Zhang Daoling, I have never seen a Taoist like you who is idle all day long. Just like you, do you still want to become a heavenly master? Do you want to revitalize Wudang? Revitalize the Taoist sect? Do you want to open a new path for the Taoist? Dream it, you." But Zhang Daoling remained unmoved at all, pinching his fingers and then sighing, "It's just that the time hasn't arrived yet. Don't be fooled by the small path wandering on the mountain all day. In fact, I'm comprehending the heavenly way. Just on the way to comprehend the heavenly way, I happened to accidentally see the young master practicing swordsmanship with thunder." Bai Xiaoyan snorted coldly and looked at Zhang Daoling in front of him with a disdainful expression. At this moment, the atmosphere between the two of them couldn't help but feel awkward. Zhang Daoling had nothing to say and tentatively asked, "Speaking of which, the young master of Wuanjun Mansion is well behaved. Why did he come to Wudang to practice martial arts?" In Zhang Daoling's view, this young master really has no need to practice martial arts. Bai Xiaoyan snorted coldly, let out a long sigh, and his gaze seemed distant for a moment. In this world, you don't just do whatever you want. When you reason with someone in this world, they will be rude to you. In those days, when the feudal lords of the world were in chaos, the Central Plains saw the coexistence of Great Qin, Great Tang, Great Ming, and Great Song. Originally, on this side of the territory of Great Qin, there were 7 kingdoms, including Han, Zhao, Wei, Chu, Yan, and Qi, standing side by side. One person surnamed Bai conquered the 6 kingdoms, and Great Qin was able to establish a stable foothold. Later, Emperor Shi Huang was also wary of martial artists' arbitrary prohibition and wanted to pacify the martial arts world. Many feudal lords and generals in the court were unable to leave due to illness, and it was my old son Bai Qi who, under the pretext of the world's reputation, suppressed the martial arts world. Later on, people all believed that the state of Chu could not be destroyed by Emperor Wenzong of the world. It was also someone surnamed Bai who did this act of seeking criticism. Within 2 months, Chu was destroyed and the capital of Chu was flooded with water. From then on, the Great Qin dynasty was firmly established in the world, with a faint reputation as the world's first country, known as the Empire by the world. However, the world's reputation was only carried away by those surnamed Bai, and the world regarded our Bai family as a raging beast. Do you think this is funny or not? At this moment, Zhang Daoling thought for a moment and suddenly took a deep breath like a sudden realization. I don't understand. I knew it wouldn't be very useful to tell you, a foolish Taoist. Bai Xiaoyan cut his throat, thanking him for confiding in Zhang Daoling. In the end, he gave himself such a reaction. Let me put it this way, my old man once fought too hard in various countries, and there were countless enemies in this world. There were also people in the court who feared his great achievements, and even rumors spread that even the first emperor of the state of Qin thought the same way. The old man's health has been poor these years, so I plan to go out to the rivers and lakes to find foreign aid. Bai Xiaoyan knew in his heart that it was obviously impossible for the Bai family to unite with other major forces in this situation. Bai Qi had offended too many countries, and almost everyone could be executed. The old man was stubborn and would never betray Qin. If you want to find allies, you may have to go to the rivers and lakes. So Bai Xiaoyan thought of Wudang Mountain near his hometown. When he was a child, his own old man had taken him up the mountain, so he was also familiar with each other. Bai Xiaoyan felt that there was still some possibility of a successful negotiation. Zhang Daoling shook his head in his heart and let out a long sigh. The world is not simple. Since Emperor Yu established the 9 provinces, there have been numerous dynasties throughout the country, including the Great Tang, Great Ming, Great Song, Great Han, and Great Qin in the martial arts world. There are also heroes emerging, including the invincible martial arts who rely on the invincibility of 10 directions to suppress the world's top-tier martial arts, the sword god who comes from the west with a sword, and the sword immortal who flies from outside the sky. How terrifying is this world of rivers and lakes. How could this crown prince have thought so simply? With this in mind, Zhang Daoling threw away his thoughts and spoke again. However, according to my senior brother, the journey of practicing martial arts is the hardest. The young master has passed the most suitable age for practicing martial arts, and due to his lack of physical fitness, he cannot cultivate true qi. It is still difficult to challenge the world's #1 invincible martial arts in the Fengyun dynasty. Zhang Daoling couldn't help but sigh. The earlier you enter the path of martial arts, the better. Only by laying a solid foundation can you possibly go further on the path of martial arts. Because practicing martial arts requires not only extremely high talent, but also the accumulation of true qi over time as the foundation. The young master in front of me not only is his talent not very good, also missed the best time to practice martial arts. The realm of martial artists in the world is divided into second-rate, first-class, acquired, innate, master, great master, ultimate realm of martial arts, heavenly and human martial arts, and land immortals. If a person practices martial arts halfway through the journey and has passed the optimal age for practicing, at most they will only become a second-rate master. Although Bai Xiaoyan has the idea of practicing martial arts now, he is already 20 years old and it is difficult to make any breakthroughs in martial arts. Bai Xiaoyan's face had already calmed down at this moment, and he said calmly, "I naturally know. Now that I am practicing swordsmanship, maybe I will practice swordsmanship again in the future. Even if I can't practice it well, and even if I give up halfway, I still have to practice." Upon seeing this, Zhang Daoling also knew that he could no longer persuade Bai Xiaoyan. This young master of Wuhan clearly embarked on this path with great determination. Zhang Daoling sighed. Although Bai Xiaoyan had never had a good face towards him, the two of them had been friends on the mountain all year. Zhang Daoling couldn't help but say to Bai Xiaoyan, "If you insist on going to the Fengyun dynasty, if you can persuade him, you will be safe and sound." After speaking, Zhang Daoling pointed to the sides of the two, and Bai Xiaoyan looked in the direction of Zhang Daoling's finger. In the distance, in the center of the golden summit, an additional person appeared at some point. Chapter 2. Taoist Wang Ye. Deep and unfathomable. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Taoist Wang Ye. Deep and unfathomable. Seeing the figure lying on the golden roof, Bai Xiaoyan couldn't help but be taken aback. When did this person come here? He didn't notice at all. And this is the golden summit. The terrifying thunder just now mostly fell at the center. Even if he practiced swordsmanship, he could still find the edge. But now, there has been someone in the center of the golden summit. Lying on the golden roof was a young Taoist dressed in a loose Taoist robe. This Taoist has a handsome and delicate face, wearing a bun, giving people a particularly lazy feeling. But on this Taoist, there was a faint and ethereal aura emanating from him, graceful and free-spirited, as if he were a banished immortal in the sky, not like a human being. However, the current lying posture of this person is somewhat admirable. He can be seen with his hands crossed behind his head, legs crossed, and a piece of dog-tail grass in his mouth. Not far below the golden roof, he is also tied to a donkey. Bai Xiaoyan glanced strangely at Zhang Daoling beside him and couldn't help but mutter, "What's going on in Wudang? Are you either growing vegetables and raising donkeys in Wudang Mountain? There are clearly graceful and immortal yellow cranes in the mountains. How can these Taoist priests of Wudang raise strange things one by one?" What made Bai Xiaoyan feel even more bewildered was the words just spoken by Zhang Daoling. If we can persuade this person, we can ensure that he is safe and sound. This person surnamed Zhang usually looks honest and straightforward, why is it so shameless to boast? Although Bai Xiaoyan felt a bit strange in his heart at the silent appearance of this young Taoist, his appearance did not seem like a master. In the eyes of Bai Xiaoyan, a master can be seen as Song Yuanxiao, the kind-hearted contemporary leader of Wudang, or as Zhang Sanfeng, the old lady of Wudang. At first glance, he looks like a fairy-like figure. Otherwise, it would have to be the 7 heroes of Wudang who are willing to show gratitude and enmity. At present, this young Taoist seems to be unable to compete with the master. However, at this moment, Bai Xiaoyan couldn't help but think more. Zhang Daoling quickly walked to the young Taoist's ear, and after saying a few words, the young Taoist yawned and stretched his waist before jumping off the mountain and rock. Bai Xiaoyan only then noticed that the young Taoist was still holding a cylindrical metal object in his hand, which was something he had never seen before. Wudang King, I've seen the young master before. The young Taoist's face wore a somewhat rebellious smile, not like other people seeing Bai Xiaoyan, either pleasing or fearing, but looking at Bai Xiaoyan as if facing an ordinary person. What is this? Bai Xiaoyan pointed to the metal object in Wang Ye's hand, somewhat curious. You can see the wonders of the world in the mansion of Marquis Wuan, and even things that cannot be found in other imperial palaces can be seen in the mansion of Marquis Wuan. But it was the first time he had seen the metal object in the hands of this young Taoist. The young master said this. It's just a thermos. A thermos cup. Upon hearing this new word that Bai Xiaoyan had never heard before, his expression of doubt became even more intense. Put hot water into this cup, and the speed at which the water cools will also slow down, Wang also said as he twisted open the metal cup in his hand and handed the thermos to Bai Xiaoyan with a shocked look on his face. I saw a cup of steaming goji berry tea brewing inside. Goji berries nourish the liver and kidneys. They are the most nourishing during this season. Why don't you have a cup, young master? Wang also smiled slightly and looked at Bai Xiaoyan, saying. Bai Xiaoyan couldn't help but look around, and in front of his eyes were a bamboo forest and a small pond with flying waterfalls. Where is a container for drinking tea? Bai Xiaoyan pointed to the thermos in front of him, looked at Wang Yi with some astonishment, and then pointed to himself. Upon seeing this, Wang smiled and said, Please wait a moment, young master. At this moment, Wang also carried a thermos and walked towards the rock. Seeing Wang also turn around, Bai Xiaoyan quickly leaned over to Zhang Daoling and asked in a low voice, Zhang Daoling, what is his method? Senior brother Wang Yi is profound and unpredictable. I'm not sure what senior brother wants to do, and I'm not sure about it either. Bai Xiaoyan noticed that Zhang Daoling seemed to have great respect for the young Taoist in front of him. At this moment, he spoke up and finally understood the identity of this young Taoist. Is he your senior brother? The young master was a bit surprised. The Taoist named Wang Yi looked much younger than Zhang Daoling, and surprisingly, he was this senior brother surnamed Zhang. The person riding the donkey is a senior brother surnamed Zhang. Wudang is really amazing. Bai Xiaoyan couldn't help but mutter to himself. Zhang Daoling's generation in Wudang was already very high. Although in the young master's eyes, this little Taoist was just a mountain runner, on the mountain, he was of the same generation as Song Yuanxiao and was considered a senior brother. And just now, Wang Yi, although he looked very young, was of the same generation as Zhang Daoling. You should know that Zhang Daoling himself has a high seniority in Wudang. He is a disciple of the old Zhenren Zhang Sanfeng and a junior brother of the contemporary Wudang leader Song Yuanxiao. Why has he never heard of the name Wang Yi? At this moment, Wang also walked straight to the donkey's side and took out 2 small purple sand cups from his pack. Then, he stood next to the rock and studied for a moment before waving to Zhang Daoling, junior brother, come and give me a hand. Upon hearing this, Zhang Daoling hurriedly rushed to Wang Ye's side, took the 2 purple clay teacups from Wang Ye's hand, and stood honestly on the side. Bai Xiaoyan looked at the somewhat strange group of martial brothers in front of him, with some confusion in his eyes. What exactly does this Taoist named Wang Ye want to do? The young master was thinking about it, but soon after, a sudden mutation occurred not far away. I saw Wang also wielding a palm and casually slashing towards the huge rock. A stunning sound of broken rocks came from the ground, and Bai Xiaoyan looked at the scene in front of him with a somewhat stunned expression. I saw that the mountain stone suddenly shattered when Wang Ye's palm touched it, and all the protruding parts were now cut off. The surface of the entire mountain stone became incredibly flat, as if it had just been flattened by someone using a sword that could cut iron like mud. The king not far away also had a calm expression, as if he had done something ordinary. He brushed away the debris on the surface of the rocks with his sleeve, then took 2 teacups from Zhang Daoling's hand and said with a smile, "Young master, the environment of the people in the mountains and wild is simple. Please forgive me, young master." Seeing this scene before him, Bai Xiaoyan's heart stirred up a huge wave. The seemingly lazy young Taoist is so unfathomable. Compared to Zhang Daoling, who was dumbfounded and kept talking about becoming a heavenly master, revitalizing Wudang, and opening up new paths for cultivators around the world, this Wang Ye's demeanor is more like the next Wudang leader. Bai Xiaoyan's mind was a bit confused, and one of the young masters he remembered was a skilled swordsman who could use his sword technique to crack mountains and rocks. But this one in front of me is bare-handed. And after this blow, there was no sign of anything amiss. Bai Xiaoyan casually responded, and at this moment, the image that came to mind was still the one of Wang Ye splitting the rocks just now. Now, upon closer inspection, the surface of the mountain stone is truly smooth, and even a decades-old stonemason may not be able to achieve this. Bai Xiaoyan looked at the scene before him and couldn't help but murmur, "This job is a reward." Because of him, I hesitated for the first time in Chapter 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Zhang Daoling. Because of him, I hesitated for the first time. Bai Xiaoyan couldn't help but blurt out in amazement. As soon as he spoke these words, he felt a bit vulgar and quickly clenched his fists at Wang Ye, looking a bit awkward. "I apologize, Taoist Wang." It was only after Xiaoyan was amazed that he had such a reaction. "This is a master of Taoism, the cowherd is sincere and not deceiving me." Bai Xiaoyan whispered in his heart. Wang also yawned with a nonchalant expression and said, "It's just a small matter, young master. Don't take it to heart." Upon hearing this, Bai Xiaoyan couldn't help but smash his mouth. In his eyes, this was a shocking tactic, but in the other person's eyes, it was just a small and unremarkable technique. The martial arts world is truly unfathomable. At this moment, Bai Xiaoyan couldn't help but realize that the real world seemed to be very different from what he had imagined. He thought that everyone in the martial arts world was like those legendary top experts who amazed the world. He is the Shimen sword god who amazed the entire Jianghu with one sword, the witch Dongfang Bai on the Black Cliff, the 3 divine monks of Shaolin Temple, and the 5 wonders of Huashan swordsmanship. Such courage is enough to be a master's demeanor. But to his surprise, the seemingly lazy little Taoist in front of him was able to crack mountains and rocks with his bare hands. At this moment, Bai Xiaoyan felt that his 3 views were about to be overturned. However, the little Taoist in front of him, Bai Xiaoyan, was not polite. He picked up the purple clay teacup in his hand and drank the tea in one gulp. At this moment, under the golden roof, Zhang Daoling and Bai Xiaoyan were each holding a teacup, while Wang still held his thermos in both hands. The 3 of them sat on the mountain and drank together. After drinking a few cups of tea, Zhang Daoling hesitated for a while, as if pondering for a long time. He spoke up and said, "Senior brother, Daoling came today and I have something to ask for." At this moment, Wang was staring at the direction of Jinding in a trance. The clouds dispersed, the wind stopped, and the rain stopped. Jinding was particularly dazzling under the sunlight. Zhang Daoling spoke up and it took him a while to come back to his senses. What's going on?" Bai Xiaoyan was left speechless and didn't say much by these strange martial brothers. He immediately spoke to Wang and said, Wang Dao Chang, I want to go to the Fengyun dynasty. This person surnamed Zhang said that if you can leave the mountain, I will be safe and sound, so. That's it. Wang also shook the insulated cup in his hand and said, Invincible martial arts. Bai Xiaoyan nodded and said, That's right, it's the invincible warrior who claims to be the strongest in the martial arts world. I won't go. Wang also shook his head and without hesitation refused Bai Xiaoyan. Upon hearing these words, Bai Xiaoyan couldn't help but sigh. Bai Xiaoyan knew in his heart that it was a turbulent dynasty, the only one among many dynasties where the martial arts world dominated the court. The prosperity of the martial arts world almost overshadowed that of other dynasties. And this invincible warrior is the strongest presence of the Fengyun dynasty, none of them. Even the 12 panicked leaders launched by Bai Xiafengxing are said to be no match for them. Not to mention that I am not related to the king, and the other party is a cultivator, so the king has no reason to leave the mountain. Bai Xiaoyan no longer had hope on his side, but to his surprise, the king was muttering to him on the side. Bored and troublesome. It's better to have a comfortable discussion with my senior brother in the mountains. Bored and troublesome. What reason is this? Is it more boring to enter the martial arts world than to stay in Wudang Mountain and practice daily? Bai Xiaoyan was a bit speechless for a while. But Wang Ye still looked plain and indifferent, seemingly without any shock. However, regardless of the reason, the other party's decisive refusal made Bai Xiaoyan realize that there was no need to invite him again. So he stood up and gave a martial arts salute to Wang, saying, Thank you, Taoist Wang, for your tea and hospitality. I'll bid farewell to Xiaoyan first. Wang also nodded lightly, while Zhang Daoling beside him was momentarily surprised. This is as the conversation collapsed. Zhang Daoling grabbed Bai Xiaoyan's sleeve and whispered, Young master, won't you advise me anymore? My senior brother is really impressive. Bai Xiaoyan shook his head and said, They have clearly refused, so any further persuasion is meaningless. Upon seeing this, Zhang Daoling sighed helplessly, bid farewell to Wang Yi, and followed Bai Xiaoyan towards the direction of the courtyard. Along the way, in Bai Xiaoyan's mind, the scene of Wang Yi slapping the rocks with a palm just now kept recurring. That's not an ordinary mountain stone, but the so-called hardest xianqi. This xianqi has no advantages except for its hardness, and even its use as a building is a luxury. You should know that even a strong master cannot easily destroy the xianqi. Now, thinking about it, the xianqi would weigh at least 1,000 pounds and was shattered by Wang Yi like this. The most shocking thing was that the cut surface of the split stone was so smooth and even that he had never seen such a method before. My surname is Zhang. When I came to Wudang Mountain before, why didn't I hear that you still have such a senior brother? Zhang Daoling shook his head and said solemnly, Senior brother Wang also said that he has been influenced by too many causes and effects with the mortal world in his cultivation. He has already been affected by a huge cause and effect, so he has been staying in the back mountain for many years and doesn't come out much. After hearing this, Bai Xiaoyan turned around and gave Zhang Daoling a kick. He looked quite disdainful and said, Zhang Daoling, did you also learn from your senior brother who has been lazy all day? With your virtue of wandering around the mountains all day without practicing martial arts, what kind of Taoist heavenly master can you become? Seeing this, Bai Xiaoyan couldn't help but sigh and became worried about Zhang Daoling. I really don't understand what you're thinking as a foolish Taoist. If you don't practice martial arts every day, how dare Li Daochang give Wudang to you then? I heard from my senior brother that when I realize the Tao, I will naturally be able to shoulder the Qi of Wudang. Zhang Daoling sighed, however, because senior brother Wang is here, it may be difficult for me to achieve my Tao. Your way. What way? Bai Xiaoyan looked up and down at Zhang Daoling and asked with a puzzled expression. The invincible way. Just you. Zhang Daoling. Ha ha ha. And your senior brother, although he does have some means, there are countless masters in this world. Who dares to claim to be invincible? Even if he is Wudi, he has never recognized the title of the best in the world. It's just that a good person gave him the name Wudi. Upon hearing Bai Xiaoyan's questioning of Wang Yi, Zhang Daoling suddenly felt a little unhappy and said, "Young master, my senior brother is really amazing. Master Yuanxiao and his disciples are also thanks to Wang Ye's guidance. Almost all the disciples on this mountain have received Wang Ye's guidance. Please be cautious." Upon hearing this, Bai Xiaoyan was immediately shocked. Zhang Daoling's senior brother in charge was naturally the current leader of Wudang, Song Yuanxiao. Song Yuanxiao is now known in the martial arts world as the highest level person in Wudang under Zhang Sanfeng, and the leader of the 7 heroes of Wudang. The realm of martial arts is highly respected among the martial arts world of the great Song dynasty, admired by everyone. The achievement of Song Yuanxiao is indispensable for Wudang's current status in the martial arts world. Song Yuanxiao was able to reach the realm of martial arts and the realm of heaven and humanity, but it was only after Wang Ye's guidance that it was finally achieved. If such a secret were to spread to the world, people would definitely listen to it as a joke. But Bai Xiaoyan is very clear about the temperament of this Daoling, and he will definitely not deceive himself. That is to say, the strength of this king is indeed profound and unpredictable. Don't worry, young master. Although senior brother is used to being lazy in the mountains, the path will still try to persuade senior brother to come out and help young master. Zhang Daoling said with a firm expression. We can also be considered old friends. Since the young master is going out of the martial arts world, I will definitely help him with this. Seeing Zhang Daoling's serious expression, Bai Xiaoyan couldn't help but smile and said, "You, the little Taoist, have some conscience. I'm afraid that my young master will die on the road, so please help me fight." But even the king and Taoist have openly refused. How much face can you have as a runner? Zhang Daoling's face turned red as he suppressed himself and said, "What's wrong with the errand runner? Senior brother Wang Yi is a very good person, and he will definitely change his mind. Because he still has some connection with you." Chapter 4. Your righteous sister is his fiancée A.E. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Your righteous sister Qingyi is his fiancée A.E., speaking of which, you two really have some connection. Zhang Daoling looked at Bai Xiaoyan with a determined expression on his face. Bai Xiaoyan was momentarily stunned, and then couldn't help but smile. That's not bad to say. We just had tea together, so we can be considered acquainted now. What, you, surnamed Zhang, are using this to persuade your senior brother to leave the mountain? Zhang Daoling knew he couldn't say it, but if he said that, the young master in front of him would surely be able to shut up. However, this matter involves the great cause and effect that senior brother Wang Yi said, and Zhang Daoling didn't know for a moment whether to say it or not. After arriving here and considering that Bai Xiaoyan was also deeply involved in this matter, Zhang Daoling pondered for a moment before finally letting out a long sigh and saying to Bai Xiaoyan in front of him. The senior brother in charge originally did not allow me to bring this matter up to outsiders, but now that the young master has arrived at Wudang and is determined to practice martial arts, I believe it is also close to that day. Bai Xiaoyan became more and more confused as he listened, and couldn't help but curse. How come you, surnamed Zhang, learned to speak like those ox-nosed old masters in a fog? Don't be too presumptuous, speak quickly. Zhang Daoling took a deep breath and said, Young master, in fact, your sworn sister Bai Qingyi is my senior brother Wang Ye's fiancée A.E. Upon hearing this, Bai Xiaoyan almost stumbled and fell to the ground, looking at Zhang Daoling in front of him with a surprised expression on his face. What? Are you, surnamed Zhang, entertaining me? Zhang Daoling looked at Bai Xiaoyan with a serious expression and said, Young master, I am the future heavenly master. How could I deceive young master? This matter was decided by Lord Wuan and brother Zhang, and it is truly true. Back then, Lord Wuan took you up Wudang Mountain, and one of them was for the marriage between senior brother Wang Ye and Qingyi. At this moment, Bai Xiaoyan's entire head is covered, his sister Qingyi and Wang Ye from Wudang Mountain. How can it be seen that these are two people who cannot be hit with 8 sticks, but Zhang Daoling said that Qingyi and Wang also have an engagement, or was it made by his father's surname Bai? His younger sister, Bai Qingyi, was adopted by the Bai family since childhood. Although he didn't know where his sister came from, Bai Xiaoyan always treated her as if she were a biological sister. More importantly, with the personality of the old man in the family, he was willing to marry his younger sister to such a young Taoist. How much more does this person surnamed Bai have to do behind my back? Bai Xiaoyan couldn't help but mutter to himself. Immediately, he regained his senses and quickly asked, "How much do you know about this matter?" Zhang Daoling shook his head and said, "I don't know how many. My senior brother and I were only 13 or 14 years old back then, and besides, Xiao Dao was not present at that time." This was later mentioned by Master Zhang. Upon hearing this, Bai Xiaoyan stopped asking further questions. Instead, his mind moved and he immediately grabbed Zhang Daoling's sleeve and ran towards the direction of Hanging Immortal Peak. "Young master, what are you doing?" Zhang Daoling was confused for a moment, not knowing what Bai Xiaoyan was going to do. Since there is this layer of relationship, then everyone is their own person, and we don't need to waste it on our own. At this moment, in the cave beneath the golden summit of the Hanging Immortal Peak, 2 Taoist priests, an old man and a young man, were sitting opposite each other. The old Taoist had white hair and looked at him with a kind expression. The old Taoist looked at the hanging golden roof and smiled faintly. "In my spare time, coming here to listen to the spring and observe the waterfall is also a good place to go." Wang also looked at the old Taoist with white hair and childlike features in front of him and couldn't help but sigh. "Senior brother, have you really decided?" There is no need to guess the identity of this old Taoist. He is naturally the current leader of Wudang, Song Yuanxiao. What's the difficulty of making a decision? I don't have much time, but the Wuan Jun of the Great Qin once promised me that Wudang would be prosperous for 100 years. This year, I have also observed the young master's character, and he is a person worthy of trust. Song Yuanxiao smiled faintly. Bao Wudang has been around for 100 years or even longer, and even younger martial brother Daoling and I can do it. Unlike the lazy look when we met by Xiaoyan and others just now, Wang also showed his sharpness and his gaze was electric. Not bad, not bad. Now even I can't see your realm clearly. Song Yuanxiao nodded satisfied. My junior brother is truly the most stunning and unparalleled genius in the history of Wudang. Song Yuanxiao couldn't help but reminisce that when he was taken to Wudang Mountain by the old crown prince Zhenzhen, the king was even younger than Zhang Daoling. But his own master insisted on ranking Wang before Zhang Daoling. After that, the old prince retired and focused on understanding the Tao, handing over the teachings to him. After so many years, Song Yuanxiao realized how cruel his master's eyesight was back then. Zhang Daoling was the reincarnation of the heavenly master, born with a Taoist physique. He was highly expected by the old Tai Gong and was directly appointed as the next leader of Wudang after Song Yuanxiao. Zhang Daoling was also dissatisfied with his high expectations, and every day he rode his ox in Wudang, earnestly comprehending the heavenly way. And Wang Ye, it's even more terrifying. The following year after he ascended the mountain, he comprehended the yin and yang principles of Tai Chi, and Tai Chi energy entered the realm of transformation. The Tai Chi and Tai Chi sword created by Zhenzhen have been fully inherited by only Wang in Wudang Mountain. Later, he also comprehended a supreme martial arts technique, Feng Hou Qi Men, which pushed Wudang's martial arts to another unattainable peak. Looking at his junior apprentice in front of him, Song Yuanxiao smiled and said, "Junior apprentice, do you remember what the master told you before the last time you closed down?" Upon hearing this, Wang's breath couldn't help but gather. Of course I remember. The wood is beautiful in the forest, and the wind will surely destroy it. Wang Ye's mind conjured up an old Taoist with a fairy-like demeanor, and he couldn't help but sigh, with a hint of nostalgia flashing in his eyes. Song Yuanxiao nodded. As Wang also said, he and Zhang Daoling can indeed protect Wudang for 100 years or even longer, and Wang is more suitable as the next leader of Wudang than Zhang Daoling. But Wudang, can we really do this? Being in the position of head teacher, Song Yuanxiao finally understood the good intentions of his master Zhang Sanfeng's arrangement back then. Wudang is hiding its clumsiness. No matter how prosperous a sect is, it is just a part of the martial arts world. But from ancient times to the present, the martial arts world has been unable to compete with the court. If Wang also succeeded as the leader, he could indeed dominate everything, but what about 100 years later? Where should Wudang go after Wang Yi and Zhang Daoling abdicate? The great Song dynasty has long been wary of Wudang, first Zhang Sanfeng, who entered the land immortal realm, and then Song Yuanxiao, who entered the martial arts realm. If there were another Wang Yi, who created his own magic, it would be difficult for Song Yuanxiao to imagine what the situation would be like. The old Tai Gong has been in seclusion for 10 years now. There are rumors in the martial arts world that the old Tai Gong has passed away, otherwise life in Wudang would not be easy now. This is also the reason why the old crown prince chose to retire back then. If Wang also succeeds as the leader, it would be a disaster rather than a blessing for Wudang. Therefore, the head of the sect, Song Yuanxiao, knowing that his longevity was limited, made a secret agreement with Lord Wuan of the Great Qin 10 years ago, offering by Xiaoyan the 1,000-year-old jade marrow Ganoderma that had been completed 10 years after Wudang as a condition. He also made a marriage agreement with Qingyi in exchange for the king and guaranteed the 100-year incense of Wudang. Originally, this 1,000-year-old jade marrow Ji was found by old Tai Gong Zhang Sanfeng and used by his eldest disciple Song Yuanxiao to hang his life. Before the old Tai Gong closed down, he had already calculated that Song Yuanxiao had only a lifespan of over 10 years left. Therefore, he traveled all over Wudang Mountain to find this immortal herb for his disciples. This 1,000-year-old jade marrow Ganoderma is born from the creation of heaven and earth. If swallowed by ordinary people, they can obtain the true qi of others who have practiced for decades, and can even prolong life. It is an unparalleled opportunity in the world. Stepping on the prosperity of blood and fire goes against the teachings of our Taoism. We must also act according to the situation. Song Yuanxiao sighed, and his choice was also the best result for Wudang. Wang couldn't help but sigh inwardly. He understood the truth, but the senior brother in front of him treated him like a brother and a father. He couldn't bear Song Yuanxiao to trade his own life for the future of Wudang. This is my decision, and it is also the most favorable decision for Wudang. Moreover, what is the current fate of the Song dynasty? With the help of my junior brother, I can't figure it out, can I? Wang also nodded silently and said, I can naturally deduce that. Just now, my junior brother came to see me with Bai Xiaoyan. They invited me out of the mountain, and my senior brother thinks, should I go? Song Yuanxiao stood up, stroking his beard and laughing, kid, do you think that by self-proclaimed in the back mountain, you can hide from the world's cause and effect? In this world, there is still one big thing waiting for you to do. Chapter 5. Brother.in.law, help. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 by Xiaoyan. Brother.in.law, help me. Is there another big deal? Please speak up, senior brother. Wang also felt extremely puzzled and couldn't help but ask Song Yuanxiao. He could see that despite the support of Wudang's mental techniques, Song Yuanxiao's qi and blood were still at their peak. But his aura was already very withered. This is a dying appearance with little time left. Wang also naturally knew why, and this was the final reflection of Song Yuanxiao. However, as a practitioner, the world of reflection may have grown much longer than ordinary people, and may last for several months. When qi and blood decline, the lamp will naturally run out of oil, and it will not be far from the lamp of death. Those who are approaching the end of their lives will have a closer connection with heaven and earth, and naturally will be able to glimpse more mysteries. Song Yuanxiao clearly saw something, that's why he said this. At this moment, it may be related to his future, and Wang naturally dare not neglect it. However, in the face of Wang Ye's questioning, Song Yuanxiao smiled faintly, as if sensing something, and said, "Those two boys have gone back and forth. It's not easy for young people to have such a resilient heart. Why don't you follow that young master out of the martial arts world and see how my brother has chosen his wife for you?" The old Taoist laughed heartily and jumped down from the edge of the cave, which was more than 10 zhang high from the water pool. Stepping into the air, in the blink of an eye, we arrived at the opposite bank of the pond. Watching Song Yuanxiao drift away, Wang couldn't help but shake his head. This old Taoist still likes to play riddles at such an old age. What exactly is the big deal that Song Yuanxiao said? I'm afraid this old Taoist doesn't want to say it clearly. Recalling what Song Yuanxiao just mentioned about his wife, Wang also smacked his lips with some helplessness and said, "Excuse me." At this moment, outside the hanging immortal peak, Zhang Daoling, who had been dragged all the way by Xiaoyan, was panting and exhausted. Sitting down on the roadside, he said he couldn't run anymore. "You've been exhausted from running a few miles on the mountain road like this, how could you still say that you've cultivated an invincible path?" Xiaoyan sneered heartlessly, but his eyes couldn't help but look towards the direction of Jinding, not knowing if that Taoist Wang has left. "With senior brother present, it's not easy for me to cultivate a great road, but what about the young master? You don't have to rely on yourself to wander in the martial arts world, so I need to urgently ask my senior brother to come out of the mountain to help." When did this person surnamed Zhang learn to have sharp teeth and sharp mouth like this? Xiaoyan couldn't help but mutter in his heart, but he explained, "In the martial arts world, it's said, there are many heroes and many paths. I don't know how many years it will take me to master this sword. With your senior brother's help on the way, it can also save a lot of trouble, can it?" Zhang Daoling rested for a while before finally regaining his composure. However, he was puzzled in his heart. After the young master met with his senior brother and expressed his intention, his senior brother refused without hesitation. At that time, His Royal Highness, the young master, didn't say a word and gave up persuading the king to go out of the mountains. Why did he suddenly change his mind now? Isn't the young master not very concerned about whether my senior brother has left the mountain? Why suddenly? At this moment, Xiaoyan's eyes seemed to have a hint of nostalgia as he said, "When my mother was here, I saw Qingyi as my own. This young master is just such a girl. Since there is an agreement between the two families, your senior brother is Qingyi's future husband. Why should I be polite to him?" After speaking, Xiaoyan pulled Zhang Daoling and walked all the way towards the golden peak of the hanging immortal peak. When they arrived nearby, they saw that the donkey was still tied to the stone and eating grass, while the king was nowhere to be seen. Seeing this, Zhang Daoling couldn't help but murmur, "Senior brother's donkey is still here, I don't think it has gone far." At this moment, Xiaoyan leaned over to the giant stone that had just been cut by Wang Yi with his bare hands, squatting down to observe carefully. Just Zhangduan mountain rock is so shocking. What kind of scene should it be like when Master Song opened the mountain with just one sleeve? Xiaoyan couldn't help but sigh. On this broken rock, he seemed to feel a wonderful artistic conception. After a few glances, Xiaoyan seemed to have a slight understanding. Xian even drew out his long sword and after a moment of maneuvering in his hand, Xian even made a horizontal cut and slashed towards that rock. Chong! The sound of a collision of gold and stone came, and Xiaoyan was shocked back a few steps by the force rebounding from the giant stone, and his knife in his hand also took off. Seeing this, Xiaoyan couldn't help but feel a little regretful. There is no true energy, not to mention splitting this mountain rock, not even leaving a trace on this rock. Young master, true qi cannot be practiced in a day, so you don't have to be too anxious. Zhang Daoling shook his head and comforted him on the side. Upon hearing this, Bai Xiaoyan was taken aback. Yes, they came to find Wang Ye this time. What kind of brute force is he using here? You, senior brother, have been wandering around like ghosts and ghosts. It's only been a while since we last saw anyone. Bai Xiaoyan smacked his lips and couldn't help but sigh. Young master, don't be impatient. Wait for me to call my senior brother and see if he is still nearby. After Zhang Daoling finished speaking, he shouted in the valley. Senior brother, where is senior brother? At this moment, outside the cave, the voice of Zhang Daoling could be heard. Wang also let out a long sigh. It was a disaster that could not be avoided. Song Yuanxiao had arranged this marriage for him back then, while also telling him that it was a major cause and effect involving him. Since then, Wang has been staying in this back mountain for years, focusing on enlightenment. But I never expected that this cause and effect would come to me by myself. Wang also glanced towards the direction of the Zhenwu Hall and couldn't help but murmur, Master, I really can't avoid this cause and effect. Wang also sighed, holding a thermos in his hand, and walked along the small path outside the cave to the edge of the water pool, only to find that Zhang Daoling and the young master of Wuhan had long been waiting there. Sorry to bother senior brother again, please forgive me. Zhang Daoling apologized to Wang repeatedly. It wasn't my intention to bother you, but the young master just said something and hasn't finished speaking yet. Upon hearing this, Wang also glanced at Bai Xiaoyan beside Zhang Daoling. He had just met this young master, and he couldn't say how much he disliked him. However, he thought of his senior brother Song Yuanxiao losing his life because he wanted to transfer the 1,000-year-old jade marrow Ji to Bai Xiaoyan. Wang couldn't be too enthusiastic about this young master. Just now, I invited this young master to have tea. I have already shown enough landlord friendship. Although the head senior brother does not oppose him going down the mountain, why is Bai Xiaoyan so certain that he is willing to go out? At this moment, Wang also noticed that Bai Xiaoyan in front of him looked a bit strange. The young master wore a strange smile on his face and stared at him like this. Young master, is there anything wrong with me? Wang also looked at Bai Xiaoyan inexplicably and couldn't help but ask. Sure, it's really too good. Bai Xiaoyan walked forward and grabbed Wang Ye's hands, saying enthusiastically, Brother-in-law, you need to help. Wang Ye. P.S. 500,000 copies, only seeking one reward and one comment, if there is an outbreak of 100,000 words on the first day. Chapter 6. Who is your brother? In law. My fiancé A.E. goes up the mountain. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 6. Who is your brother? In law. My fiancé A.E. goes up the mountain. Did you make a mistake, young master? Who is your brother? In law. Wang also had a bewildered expression on his face. Even if this young master tried to get close to him, how could he still attract relatives? At this moment, Bai Xiaoyan had a flattering smile on his face. Where did he still look like a young master? My brother. In law is joking. Qingyi grew up in my Lord Wuan's mansion since childhood and was my adopted daughter. That's my own sister. Dao Chang Wang and Qingyi have an engagement, isn't that my brother? In law. Wang also looked at Bai Xiaoyan with a disdainful expression on his face. Is it possible for him to establish a relationship? This young master doesn't look like a young master at all, but rather like a mischievous scoundrel wandering the streets. I am a monk, and it's really inappropriate to have relatives with the young master. Wang also yawned, if there's nothing else, I'll go back to bed first. Brother. In law, please take a moment. Let's reconsider what I said before. Taoist, follow me out of the martial arts world and take a look at the scenery outside the mountain. Bai Xiaoyan saw that a plan couldn't be achieved and quickly came up with another move, probing and asking. Yes, senior brother. Senior brother's understanding of Taoism is far above mine, and he should also enter the world of mortals in order to cultivate the great way to perfection. Zhang Daoling took a deep breath and tried to persuade Wang Ye. Wang also stretched lazily, but yawned incessantly, "I'm not interested." After speaking, Wang casually found a piece of blue stone and lay down, ignoring Bai Xiaoyan. Seeing that Wang also refused to eat, Bai Xiaoyan couldn't help feeling a bit discouraged at this moment. However, at this moment, Bai Xiaoyan's heart moved and he pulled out his long sword from the scabbard, chopping and chopping not far in front of Wang Ye. Buzz! A crisp buzzing sound sounded, and Bai Xiaoyan couldn't help but curl his lips. Unable to persuade Wang Ye, Bai Xiaoyan made up his mind to waste time with him here. Anyway, there was nothing urgent to go down the mountain. He was just playing hard and trying to get Wang Ye down. Wang Ye, who was finally feeling a bit confused, couldn't sleep because of the sound of knives. He frowned and glanced up at Bai Xiaoyan. Then, with a helpless expression on his face, he shook his head and muttered to himself, "Forget it, forget it. I can't keep watching anymore." Jumping off the blue stone, Wang also walked impatiently to Bai Xiaoyan's side and said, "Give me the knife." Upon hearing these words, Bai Xiaoyan immediately felt a sense of joy in his heart. It seemed that his persistence had already had some effect. If Wang Ye, a mysterious expert, was willing to give him some guidance, it would definitely benefit him immensely. At this moment, Bai Xiaoyan stared intently at Wang Ye, while Wang also weighed his long sword in his hand and slowly raised his eyebrows. Just raising an eyebrow, the original lazy temperament disappeared and turned into a mighty sword intent that was about to cut open the world. The next moment, Wang also seemingly unintentionally slashed a knife towards the distant sky. In this moment, the wind stops and the clouds stagnate. In the next second, the clouds and mist shatter. There are no fancy moves, it's just a knife. That seemingly unintentional knife seemed to move like 1,000 pounds, and even standing behind Wang Ye, Bai Xiaoyan could feel the unparalleled sharpness. With this strike, it felt as if all the swordsmen in the world were bowing their brows, while the lazy Taoist in front of him seemed like the master of swords in the world at this moment. The invisible waves stirred up 1,000 zhang sword-like aura on the calm Tichin Qiong, with a majestic sound that hung over the willows for dozens of miles, like a rainbow piercing the sun and a shooting star falling down. My sword is called Bu-Er, my heart is Bu-Er, my intention is Bu-Er, and my sword is Bu-Er. No one in the world can wield the second sword. Wang also spoke slowly, using the most casual words, but speaking with boundless domineering power. Bai Xiaoyan watched this scene and listened to Wang Ye's words, feeling an indescribable shock in his heart. After a long time, he finally regained his composure and changed into a flattering smile. "Brother, teach me, okay?" Since that day when the king also struck a sword under the Golden Summit, Bai Xiaoyan has been running more and more frequently to the Golden Summit of the Taihe Palace in recent days. Practicing swordsmanship under the Golden Summit, Bai Xiaoyan occasionally received guidance from Wang. Although he swung his sword thousands or even tens of thousands of times every day, he had no intention of retreating, but instead became more and more determined as he practiced. This made Wang couldn't help but look up at this young master. Bai Xiaoyan's hands have been wrapped in bandages these days, but his perseverance in enduring hardship doesn't seem like a well-behaved young master. Wang was not averse to pointing fingers at Bai Xiaoyan. When the young master asked, he spoke without much detail. This stinky kid wants to teach Bai Xiaoyan to come down the mountain quickly and avoid causality. The benevolent old Taoist at the top of the immortal peak observed these three people secretly for several days. Bai Xiaoyan comes to practice swordsmanship with Wang Ye every day, and under his guidance, he also makes rapid progress. Zhang Daoling is responsible for running errands for the two, which is called understanding the way of heaven. Song Yuanxiao doesn't even need to think about it. Wang was also the one he watched grow up from a young age, and he knows exactly what kind of temperament Wang has. The reason why Wang is so actively teaching Bai Xiaoyan how to practice swordsmanship is obviously to avoid the cause and effect. My junior brother is naturally afraid of trouble. Compared to the trouble of going down the mountain, it is easier to teach by Xiaoyan. However, Song Yuanxiao smiled faintly as he stroked his beard. Counting the days, it was likely that Wu Anjuan's side would also take action. As expected. A few days later, a graceful woman with a gun on her back went up the mountain. Green silk, green clothes, and blue embroidered shoes, standing there is a graceful ink painting. What's going on these past few days? How could there be women climbing up Wudang Mountain? This is really rare. Under the memorial archway of Xuanwu Dangxing, 2 young Taoists guarding the gate couldn't help muttering. Wudang Mountain is a place for Taoist cultivation. I haven't seen many women climb the mountain in a year. In these few days, I have come up with such a beautiful woman. And they were all young women with stunning looks, as if they had walked out of the painting. Is the female hero going up the mountain to pray for blessings or to ask divination? The 2 young Taoist priests guarding the mountain gate asked as usual. Come see my brother in the mountains, there is a letter from the Lord of Wuan's mansion. Qingyi nodded slightly at the 2 young Taoist priests and looked at the misty Wudang Mountain. The person from Wuan Lord's mansion. Dressed in green clothes. Are you the grandmother? The 2 young Taoist priests looked up and down at the young man, and everyone suddenly became excited. Upon hearing this, Qingyi was momentarily stunned, then blushed slightly and spat lightly, saying, Who is your grandparents? However, before Qingyi could defend himself, he heard the 2 little Taoist children shouting loudly, Grandmother has gone up the mountain. Upon hearing this, the cleaning miscellaneous children in the mountain gate rushed towards the entrance, surrounding their green clothes in the middle. This is grandmother. She looks so beautiful. It's just like what comes out of the painting. At this moment, Qingyi was completely confused. Did these Taoist priests from Wudang Mountain mistake someone? Grandmother, please wait a moment, I'll go inform little master. The 2 gatekeepers ran away in a flash, using Wudang's unique skill of 8 steps to chase cicadas. After a moment, the cries of 2 young Taoist children rang out from under the hanging immortal peak. Little master, grandmother has gone up the mountain. Upon hearing this, Wang, who was lying on the blue stone with his legs crossed to bask in the sun, almost fell off the stone. Upon hearing what these 2 little Taoist children were saying, Wang couldn't help but grit his teeth and say, Senior brother. Wu Jun. Are you forcing me down the mountain? Chapter 7. Qingyi, advise our brother. In law. Beiyuan County. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 7 Qingyi, advise our brother. In law. Northern Yuan Princess Xiaomin. At this moment, Bai Xiaoyan, who was wielding his sword under the golden roof, heard the news and laughed as he couldn't hold his sword steady. After spending the past few days together, Bai Xiaoyan discovered that Wang has always had the image of a reclusive expert. It is feared that the only news that can make Wang lose his composure is the news of going up the mountain in green clothes. I saw Wang also quickly climb up from the blue stone, as if facing a great enemy, waving his hand at the 2 nearby little road boys to signal their arrival. Qingfeng Mingyue, what are you 2 talking nonsense about? What grandparents? Seeing this, even Zhang Daoling beside him couldn't help but sigh. It seems that even now, senior brother Wang still cannot accept this fact. I thought hiding in the back mountain would make it okay, but who would have thought that this cause and effect would come knocking on my door? As Teacher Zhang said, these days when Teacher Zhang was telling us stories before going to bed, he said that it was little teacher's fiancé A.E. who was about to go up the mountain. He came from Wuan Jun of the Great Qin, dressed in green clothes and looking like a fairy, and that's grandmother. Xiao Dao Tong Qin Feng said solemnly. Upon hearing this, the king couldn't help but twitch his lips. Senior brother, you are indeed cruel and ruthless. At this moment, on the forest path not far away, there were also bursts of children's playful sounds. The sound grew closer and closer, and Wang seemed to have guessed something, feeling uneasy in his heart. As soon as he stepped out, he left a few remnants in place. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared. As for Wang Daochang, my family's green clothes are not unattractive. They run too fast and don't even want donkeys, Bai Xiaoyan muttered as he saw Wang also decisively slip away. At this moment, a woman in green was also surrounded by a group of young Taoist children and arrived at the foot of the hanging immortal peak. At the entrance of the eye, I saw a woman dressed in green clothes with a plain face and holding a long gun approaching in a graceful manner. Perhaps sensing something, I saw it looking up from below. As she looked up, a sweet and gentle, delicate and free-spirited face caught everyone's eye. In theory, there were many peerless beauties in the world, and Bai Xiaoyan had seen many of them. Even if this woman was extremely beautiful, she wouldn't be any different. But the woman in front of me is completely different. At first glance, I only felt that she was beautiful and free-spirited, but then I saw that her expression was indifferent but unintentionally had a hint of playfulness. I saw that she was both beautiful and charming, and later I felt that there was infinite charm surrounding my heart. In summary, this beautiful woman who combines beauty, sweetness, gentleness, playfulness, elegance, coolness, and charm is not an exaggeration to be a fairy. In a moment of shock and silence, in the eyes of everyone, the entire world seemed to have dimmed a bit. Undoubtedly, this woman is dressed in green. Even if one is dressed in ordinary green clothes, it is hard to imagine what a stunning fairyland it would be if they were dressed in gorgeous attire. I have seen my elder brother in Qingyi. Upon seeing Bai Xiaoyan, Qingyi immediately looked solemn and bowed. Bai Xiaoyan nodded, and the woman in front of him was usually as gorgeous as peach blossoms and as cold as frost. But now surrounded by a group of small Taoist children in the middle, in the midst of the embarrassment of Qingyi, there is actually a hint of a small woman's posture. Undoubtedly adding a touch of elegance. Did the person surnamed Wang save the common people in their previous life? There is such a good marriage in this life. Bai Xiaoyan couldn't help but sigh, that Taoist Wang was really lucky. The contradictory words of softness, elegance, and coldness, loneliness, and arrogance were both particularly suitable for Qingyi. Seeing the embarrassed appearance of Qingyi surrounded by a group of young Taoist children in the middle, Bai Xiaoyan couldn't help but laugh and said, "I dare not accept your gift. Wudang grandmother has a high seniority, and this time you worship, you will sacrifice your life for your brother." Upon hearing this, Qingyi couldn't help but furrow her brows. What was going on? Looking at her brother's embarrassed expression, she seemed to know something. But without much time to think, Qingyi quickly took out a letter from her backpack and handed it to Bai Xiaoyan, saying, "Brother, this is a letter from my adoptive father to you. What's wrong with this person surnamed Bai? I sent you here just to write a letter." Bai Xiaoyan took the letter and then suddenly realized it. He pulled his long voice and pretended to be enlightened, saying, "Oh, by the way, you're not just here for this letter. This letter was delivered by the way." Upon hearing this, Qingyi felt even more puzzled, but before he could ask a question, he saw Bai Xiaoyan, who was reading the letter at the moment, with a more serious expression on his face. Bai Xiaoyan finished reading Wu Anjuan's letter in one breath, and his face looked a bit ugly for a moment. Immediately, he threw the letter to Zhang Daoling on the side and questioned, "Did you know from the beginning that your surname is Zhang?" Upon hearing this, Zhang Daoling couldn't help but remain silent. After a long time, he sighed and said, "Young master, I only found out recently." "Young master, there's no need to think too much. My senior brother will go to Lord Wuan's mansion with him then, and it's not that someone is forcing him." Upon hearing this, Bai Xiaoyan became somewhat absent-minded. After staying on the mountain for a year, the old Taoist treated him well and gave himself to the Lord of Wuan's mansion. As a result, old Psalm was about to die. It was obvious that Bai Xiaoyan did not want to see such a situation. However, his old injury from Bai Qi's past has recurred. Apart from Song's desperate attempt to save him, there must be no other way. "Damn it, I don't want it anymore." Bai Xiaoyan snatched the letter back from Zhang Daoling's hand and tore it up for Yang. What about what his father arranged? He just doesn't accept it. Seeing Bai Xiaoyan like this, Qingyi couldn't help but sigh. Brother, how should I reply to my adoptive father like this? Upon hearing Qingyi's words, Bai Xiaoyan was taken aback for a moment. Then, seeing Qingyi beside him, he felt as if he had thought of something and was immediately overjoyed. Yes. How could I forget you? That person surnamed Bai specially sent you up the mountain, there must be deep meaning inside. Bai Xiaoyan's heart was moved. Why did the person surnamed Bai send a blue robe to Wudang when there were so many people in the Lord's mansion of Wuhan? With the cunning planning of that cripple, there is definitely his intention behind it. Is this another path given by someone surnamed Bai? Bai Xiaoyan couldn't help but ponder. Wang was also unwilling to go out of the mountain and change his green clothes to persuade, perhaps it would be useful. Thinking of this, Bai Xiaoyan immediately smiled and said to Qingyi, Qingyi, you can't leave yet. I have an important matter to entrust to you, young master. But according to my elder brother's orders. Bai Xiaoyan pretended to be worried and sighed, Qingyi, my brother.in.law doesn't want to go out of the mountains and accompany me in the martial arts world. Now, this young master's true energy will be useless for a while. Sister, why don't you go and plead with Taoist Wang for mercy? He is your future husband, so it's definitely not easy for him to refuse when you ask. Upon hearing these words, Qingyi was immediately stunned. Brother.in.law, future husband. What is this all about? Why doesn't she remember having any fiancé ae? No. Qingyi frowned slightly, and upon careful consideration, some distant memories flooded into her mind. It seems that 10 years ago, Luan Jin once took Bai Xiaoyan to Wudang with her. After coming down from the mountain, Luan Jin mentioned to her and helped her arrange a good marriage. However, this matter is too distant and has long been forgotten by Qingyi. Today when she went to Wudang, the reaction of the Taoist priests on Wudang Mountain, coupled with the young master's guidance, made her recall. She has an engagement with a Taoist from Wudang, it seems that it is indeed true. Having confirmed the authenticity of this matter, Qingyi was also somewhat at a loss. She grew up in the mansion of Lord Wuan from a young age, and her wife treated her like a daughter. Now that this is a marriage arranged by her adoptive father, Lord Wuan, she naturally won't object. But she had never met her future husband, and she didn't know how old or how beautiful he looked. Now, her older brother wants her to persuade him to leave the mountain. How should two strangers speak up? Qingyi hesitated for a moment. Brother. Just as Qingyi was still hesitating, he saw a boy rushing towards him on the mountain road. Breathing heavily, he said, Young master, little master Daoling, something's wrong. The seventh prince is here again. They have brought the imperial gold medal, and the disciples of the mountain gate dare not stop them. I'm afraid we've already barged in. Upon hearing this, Bai Xiaoyan couldn't help but shrink his pupils. He held a jade clear sword in his hand, but without waiting for Zhang Daoling and Qingyi, he quickly ran away with the sword in his hand. At this moment, on the mountain path of Wudang Mountain, a young master holding a folding fan, with gloomy eyebrows and eyes, and an imposing aura, fiercely confronted the disciples of Wudang Mountain. But in the distance of the mountain path stood another wave of people. Led by a handsome and unparalleled young master, holding a folding fan, followed by two imposing and gloomy elders. If there is a discerning person here, one can naturally recognize him. Where is this young master? Clearly, she is a stunning woman disguised as a man. Chapter 8. Two Great Masters. Terrifying. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Two Great Masters. Terrifying. Bai Xiaoyan walked quickly and arrived at the main road at the foot of the mountain. He saw a group of people squeezing the mountain path tightly, carrying knives and swords with a fierce momentum. At the same time, one person stood in front, proudly holding a fast gold medal, forcing a group of Wudang disciples to retreat one after another. Bai Xiaoyan's eyes were sharp as he saw two Taoist priests who were guarded by Wudang disciples in the center. They were ordinary people responsible for guarding the mountain gate. At this moment, their breath was as if they were slightly injured, but fortunately, there were no fatalities. Open your dog eyes and see clearly. This is the gold medal bestowed by the Holy Emperor. Seeing the gold medal is like seeing the Holy Emperor. If you don't worship, you will disobey the court. Today, I want to see who dares to stop you. Bai Xiaoyan looked coldly at the seventh prince of the Song dynasty in front of him. This was not the first time they had come up the mountain to provoke him. Not long after he went up the mountain, this group of people followed him like front and back, settling near Wudang Mountain. He had already approached him several times before, but he deliberately avoided them. Speaking of this seventh prince, Bai Xiaoyan really has some entanglements with the other party. The cause was still due to the good deeds of his own father Bai Qi. When this seventh prince of the Song dynasty was born, he happened to have reached an alliance and marriage with the first school in the world in Dayan. Later on, the great Chu was destroyed, and there was no way to talk about this marriage. In theory, the matter should end here, but unfortunately, news has spread that the daughter of Emperor Wenzong of the Great Yan did not die, but was taken into the mansion by Bai Qi and became his maidservant for Bai Xiaoyan. Has one's fiancée become someone else's maid? I'm afraid no one can bear this tone, not to mention that he is still a prince, let alone that Bai Xiaoyan ran from Daqin to Dasong. What Bai Xiaoyan didn't expect was that this time, the other party somehow obtained the imperial gold medal and wanted to forcibly climb Wudang Mountain. He is now in the realm of the great Song dynasty and should have acted in a low-key manner, but the other party is so deceiving that no matter what their identity is, he can't bear it. And, if it's just targeting him, it's not a big deal. It's just a matter of going through a scene, after all, rumors are also facts. But this guy even started attacking Wudang disciples. Bai Xiaoyan coldly snorted and unsheathed his long sword, directly slashing at the strong man in front of him. The strong man was surprised by Bai Xiaoyan's astonishing sword intent, and a hint of strangeness rose in his eyes. A kid with no real energy, but quite adept at using a knife. At this moment, Bai Xiaoyan integrated the knife that Wang Ye had swung in front of the waterfall into his own technique, and for a moment, the attack was continuous. Even the strong man across from him couldn't help but marvel at the talent of the young man in front of him. But Bai Xiaoyan still didn't have true qi in his body. After a few moves, he was beaten by the strong man and vomited blood. Princess, it seems that neither of these two groups of people is from Wudang, but their identities are not simple, said an old man with a shadow towards the seventh prince in front of him. I have long heard that Tu Baiqi's son is in Wudang Mountain, and this must be the one in front of me. The handsome young master spoke in a female voice, which made people imagine what kind of charm it would be if she came here in women's clothing. In the court of the Great Qin dynasty, Prime Minister Li Si criticized Bai Qi and Meng Tian for their excessive killing, and both sides were almost torn apart. In addition, the Great Qin kingdom had been peaceful for a long time, and the first emperor also harbored suspicion towards these two generals who held heavy troops to defend one side. There are rumors that the god-slaying army will not kneel when they see the king, but only kneel to kill the gods. The entire Marquis of Wuan Mansion is at the forefront of the storm. Wudang and the Bai family have old friends, so I believe Bai Xiaoyan came to Wudang to avoid trouble. After all, in the Great Qin, I don't know how many gazes were on him. Then these other people, another old man couldn't help but ask. I heard that the emperor of the Song dynasty had a prince who was very fond of him and bestowed a gold medal. Naturally, this guy was the seventh prince of the Song dynasty. I truly deserve to be a princess. It's better to be an old slave. The handsome young master spoke calmly and said, Today I am waiting for Wudang to form an alliance with the Yuan and Wudang Mountain. You and I don't need to intervene yet, just wait and see what happens. At this moment, although Bai Xiaoyan was injured in one move, he didn't spare anyone on his lips. In just a few words, the seventh prince was provoked into a rage, and immediately ordered the gloomy old eunuch beside him to take the life of Bai Xiaoyan. At the critical moment, a sword suddenly struck in the forest. With a clang, the sword lay horizontally in front of the attendant and Bai Xiaoyan. The style of the sword made the seventh prince's face extremely cold. Who's taking action? Do you dare to move a noble person in Wudang? As soon as the eunuch finished speaking, he saw two middle-aged Taoist priests walking in the bamboo forest not far away. Mo Xing Valley, Yu Lianzhou. The attendants recognized the two people in front of them at a glance. The seven heroes of Wudang were well known in the martial arts world, so it was easy to recognize them. But the eunuch did not expect that Wudang would dare to take action at such a time. In recent years, the Song dynasty supported Longhu Mountain, and the other two factions of the Taoist sect were suppressed and unable to hold their heads up. Zhang Sanfeng is nowhere to be found, and Wudang's talents are withering away. It is reasonable to say that one should not dare to confront the court head on. But today, the highly ranked Wudang 7 heroes in Wudang Mountain dare to meddle in such trivial matters. Not bad, it's just me too. I saw Yu Lianzhou's palm shake, and the sword immediately rolled back and fell into Yu Lianzhou's hand. The sword-wielding attendant looked at the two people in front of him with some fear, retreated to the side of the seventh prince, and carefully bent down to say something. At this moment, the seventh prince's face was uncertain as he pointed to the two highly respected Taoist priests in the martial arts world and said, "You two stinky ox noses are trying to favor him, are you? Do you want to defect to the Qin dynasty and join the Qin dynasty? So, are you really not afraid that your Song army will ban horses from stepping on Wudang?" Yu Lianzhou said indifferently, "This is the boundary of Wudang. The Dao Gate is pure and does not belong to any country. I kindly ask all distinguished guests not to take action and give me face on Wudang Mountain." The incident in the mountains had already caused a stir, and Yu Lianzhou and others were worried that it would escalate. They quickly went to find their senior brother Song Yuanxiao. But to my surprise, the senior brother in charge of teaching gave a faint smile and didn't even send the 7 heroes to Baiji. He just asked Yu Lianzhou and the other two to go and intervene to block both sides. At this moment, Qingyi and Zhang Daoling also rushed over. Although Zhang Daoling was not very serious in front of Bai Xiaoyan and was often scolded by him, he didn't reply much and just laughed it off. But that doesn't mean he's afraid of things. How can people who aspire to become celestial masters and open up new paths in the future be afraid? And he used Bai Xiaoyan as his friend. When friends were in trouble, he naturally wouldn't sit idly by. He even stood up and said, "Young master, don't panic. I have been teaching in Wudang for decades, and no one dares to act so recklessly on Wudang Mountain." Upon hearing Zhang Daoling's words, Yu Lianzhou and the other two couldn't help but feel a headache. What did this junior apprentice come out to join in the fun? Originally, Wudang was supposed to be a mediator in the middle, which was already exposed, but when Zhang Daoling spoke up, wasn't this just a show of anger? Upon hearing this, the seventh prince also became furious. His status was extremely prestigious, and the wild Taoist from somewhere even compared her to a wild dog in the mountains. "Chop off that broken tongue and feed it to the dog." The seventh prince curled his lips and immediately gave an order. The gloomy eunuch and the sword-wielding attendant rushed to Zhang Daoling to kill them. I saw the eunuch rise into the air, turning his fist into a palm. The swordsman also wielded a pair of knives and swung towards Zhang Daoling, eager to take his life. Yu Lianzhou and Mo Xinggu were also shocked and they saw this. Zhang Daoling is the future of Wudang, and even if he offends the extraordinary woman in front of him today, he should not be surprised. I saw that Mo Xinggu stepped out directly and welcomed the elderly attendant in mid-air. Yu Lianzhou also drew his sword and confronted the swordsman. The two of them were not moving quickly, but the two opposites seemed to be stuck in a quagmire. First, the swordsman's double swords were stuck by Yu Lianzhou's sword, and after a few attempts, he took them off. The attendant on the side was also stripped of his strength by Mo Xinggu, and soon he was beaten back a few steps, spitting blood from his mouth. Seventh Prince, these two people have a higher level than us, and I'm afraid I'm not a match. The eunuch's face was pale and frightened. Wudang Mountain's unique skills in Tai Chi and Tai Chi sword were indeed terrifying. Don't blame your esteemed guest. My junior brother is the future leader of Wudang. If we attack my junior brother, we will have to defend ourselves. However, Yu Lianzhou and Mo Xinggu's mood is not at all relaxed now. Upon hearing this, the seventh prince also knew that things could not be done, but instead smiled and said, "You are really brave. I have recorded today's incident with Wudang. I am ready to leave." Yu Lianzhou and his companions breathed a sigh of relief, but although they had just saved Hong Xixiang, they completely offended the great Song dynasty. How are these two people? The handsome young master spoke with great interest outside the mountain path. Report back to the princess, these two should have a grandmaster realm. Upon hearing the answer from the elderly man beside him, the handsome young master curled his lips and smiled, saying, Lao, go and try it out. Let's see what kind of goods Wudang really has. It can also be considered as a gift for the alliance between the Yuan and Song. Upon hearing this, the two old men with shadows suddenly moved, their bodies resembling ghosts, and flew towards the nearby Yu Lianzhou and his companions. The two elderly men moved their palms one on the left and the other on the right, and at this moment, there was an extremely cold and crazy surge in their old and withered palms. Be careful, two Taoist masters. Bai Xiaoyan saw this and immediately panicked and shouted loudly. At this moment, Yu Lianzhou and her companions also felt the overwhelming killing intent coming from behind. Turning around to block, I saw the surging cold in the palms of these two old men, as if it were real, surging towards Yu Lianzhou and Mo Xinggu in front of me. The terrifying chill made people feel palpitations. Yu Lianzhou and her companions barely resisted it, but they also took a few steps back, spitting blood from their mouths, and their breath was weak. Xuanming Divine Palm. You are the two elders of Xuanming. Yu Lianzhou and his companions wanted to mobilize their true qi, but they found that their qi and blood seemed to have been frozen all over, and internal injuries spread throughout their organs and internal organs. Yu Lianzhou stood up with his sword, gritted his teeth, and said to Hong Xixiang behind him, Junior brother, take the crown prince and them first. These two old demons are great masters. Chapter 9. Xuanming Divine Palm. No one in Wudang can control it. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Xuanming Divine Palm. No one in Wudang can control it. Grand Master. At this time, Bai Xiaoyan only felt a tingling sensation on his scalp. These two seemingly ordinary and gloomy old men are actually the notorious Xuanming second elders in the martial arts world. What is the identity of the woman who drove these two people to dress up as a man? Don't hesitate, let's go. Call teacher Zhang to come. Yu Lianzhou propped herself up with her sword and struggled to stand up, supporting each other with Mo Xinggu, blocking in front of a few people. I didn't expect Wudang to fall to this point without Zhang Zhenren. This is Wudang, this is the 7 heroes of Wudang that everyone in the Central Plains praises. In the eyes of the dear Wan guest and the crane Pen Wang, they were all disdainful. They both said that Wudang Mountain is a holy land of martial arts in the Central Plains, and now it seems that it is nothing more than that. It is said that the stars in the martial arts world of the great Song dynasty were shining, and the martial arts were flourishing. Now it seems like nothing more than that. Wudang is just a name in vain. Upon hearing this, Yu Lianzhou was instantly filled with anxiety. The two elders of Xuanming have insulted their sect. As a disciple of Wudang, how can he tolerate it? Wanting to wield her sword and fight again, she didn't want to move, but it affected her internal injuries. Suddenly, Yu Lianzhou's lips turned purple, and a mouthful of black blood spurted out. Overestimating your abilities, do you think you are Tong Guan, the martial arts and mystical public minister of the great Song dynasty? Do you still want to fight against the great master even in a mere master's realm? Yu Lianzhou's current situation is relatively good, and Mo Xinggu beside him can no longer stand, lying on the ground with a green and black color, and his body trembling uncontrollably. Bai Xiaoyan felt a bit dazed when he saw this scene before him. I thought there was only one seventh prince going up the mountain today. Just now, the two Taoist masters of Wudang have already calmed the crisis for him, but no one expected that the two elders of Xuanming were also in Wudang. While everyone was relaxed, they boldly attacked the two Taoist masters of Wudang. The most terrifying thing is that the two elders of Xuanming were the great masters of cultivation in the realm. With just one palm, they had already seriously injured Yu Lianzhou and Mo Xinggu. At this point, it's too late for the 10,000 victorious soldiers to descend from the mountain and climb up the mountain. Even if they run, can they still run away? The nearby deer Wander laughed heartily and looked at the green clothes next to Bai Xiaoyan with a lustful expression. This little lady is truly the most beautiful in the world. After slaughtering the entire Wudang sect, come and enjoy it. At this moment, behind the two elders of Xuanming, the young master, disguised as a woman, spoke again. Capture Bai Xiaoyan, kill everyone else. Upon hearing these words, Bai Xiaoyan suddenly felt a warning in his heart. He and this fake young master are truly stunning. They only met for the first day today, but the other party wanted to use an assassin. However, upon second thought, there were countless people with the surname Bai who had destroyed their country. Before my eyes, perhaps this was the old and young remnants of a fallen country who came to avenge their enemies. But the young master still wanted to be a clear ghost and immediately spoke up, since the girl wants to kill me, she must let me know your surname and who. The white-clothed young master smiled faintly and said, that's as the young master wishes. Princess Xiaomin, the great Yuan of our palace, just set out with peace of mind. Upon hearing this, Bai Xiaoyan looked shocked and couldn't help but curse angrily, my Bai family has no grievances or grudges against you, the Yuan. Why did you kill me? Zhao Min smiled silently, why did she kill Bai Xiaoyan? Naturally, it's for the sake of accepting a petition. One day after the existence of Emperor Wuan of the Great Qin dynasty, the royal family of the Great Song dynasty was like a light shining on their backs. There is no other reason, because since the killing god massacred Zhao, he has been guarding the west of the Great Qin, and unfortunately, the western border of the Great Qin is exactly the Great Song. The shadow of the famous tree of human beings, the killing god Bai Qi, kills people like a horse and is known as human slaughter. More importantly, the first emperor of the Great Qin dynasty was even more ambitious, promising to launch a national war and attack the Great Song dynasty at any time. Now, without a word of greeting, Bai Xiaoyan, the son of Lord Wuan of the Great Qin, crossed over to his territory in the Song dynasty, which made the Song dynasty not be vigilant. It can be said that the person who wants Bai Xiaoyan's life the most now is the one on the Song dragon chair. However, the one who is also afraid of the 300,000 god-slaying army, once the court takes action against Bai Xiaoyan, he will be angry and may not know how to trample on the Great Song dynasty. And her Zhao Min doesn't mind making a big Song's hand knife once. In recent years, with the rise of the Ming dynasty and the continuous retreat of the Yuan army, there is an urgent need for an ally to contain the Ming dynasty. The Great Song dynasty, which was also located in the Central Plains, was the most promising presence of the Great Yuan dynasty. Zhao Min came to the Central Plains this time to form an alliance with the Song dynasty. If the chips of Bai Xiaoyan's head could be added to the negotiation table, the chances of success in this trip would undoubtedly be much greater. And why is the Yuan not afraid of the Qin? It's because of distance. The Qin and the Yuan are separated by two countries, Song and Ming. Even if that person Tu Baiqi is angry, how can he still cross two countries to attack the Yuan? Not to mention that the Yuan was not afraid. If war broke out, how could the Song and the Ming tolerate other countries' armies taking their own territory? The northern barbarians are all ambitious wolves. Young master, hurry up and don't fall into the hands of this witch. Yu Lianzhou tried to use his true energy to stop the two elders of Xuanming, but unfortunately, there was a gap in his own realm and he was seriously injured. With just one face, Yu Lianzhou was blasted out by the Luan guest's palm. Those two figures were like ghosts, approaching by Xiaoyan in the blink of an eye. At the critical moment, a blue light flashed past, and a beautiful figure in green clothes blocked by Xiaoyan's face. Seeing the crimson long spear without a tassel in Qingyi's hand, the deer wand man and the crane pen man were momentarily dazed, and even a hint of fear flashed in their eyes. Qingyi Gun. Who are you, Gun Immortal King Xiu? The deer wand guest let out a strange cry. The Qingyi Gun, which had been extinct in the martial arts world for more than 20 years, has reappeared today. The person who once roamed the north and first called the Gun King and then the Immortal, still reminds people of it with great fear. Brother Nian, hurry up. Qingyi's voice was as cold as ice, and Bai Xiaoyan was completely stunned at this moment. He never expected that his younger sister, whom he had been with since childhood, would actually be skilled in martial arts. This is also the first time he has seen Qingyi holding an ancient gun. It's like a completely different person from usual, cold as a dead thing. Under the golden peak of the hanging immortal peak, Wang, who was sitting with his eyes closed, seemed to have a feeling in his heart and suddenly opened his eyes. There are actually two great masters. The murderous intent permeated the Wudang Mountains, and naturally couldn't escape Wang Ye's eyes. The breath of those two great masters was clearly transmitted from the direction of the Bai Xiaoyan mountain road. It's strange, why doesn't senior brother Yuanxiao take action? Wang Yi felt a bit strange in his heart. According to reason, Song Yuanxiao had entered the realm of martial arts, heaven, and humanity since the completion of the Taoist method. How could he not notice the aura of the two masters in the realm of major masters? Upon careful consideration, Wang realized that the place where the accident occurred was at Bai Xiaoyan's residence, and it was obvious that he had come to trouble this young master. Do you want to use this method to force me to take action? Wang also guessed Song Yuanxiao's plan in an instant. His senior brother obviously wanted to take this opportunity to see what level he had reached now. Do you also want to have a chance for heroes to save beauty? Senior brother, you are really old and not serious. Wang also shook his head helplessly. Although his senior brother was a bit disrespectful, Song Yuanxiao really caught his lifeline. Wang doesn't care about Bai Xiaoyan's life or death, but considering that Zhang Daoling and Bai Xiaoyan have been very close recently, Wang has to pay attention to this matter. Zhang Daoling has never practiced martial arts. How could he have a way out when facing two great masters? He regards Wudang as his home and his martial brothers as his family, so naturally he will not watch Zhang Daoling fall into crisis. Moreover, Zhang Daoling is also involved in the great fortune of Wudang, and the one who has an engagement with him is Bai Xiaoyan's sister, so Wang cannot sit idly by. Let's go, it seems that only the poor Taoist can handle this idle matter today. Wang also sighed and stepped onto the donkey beside him, patting its buttocks and sighing helplessly. Immediately, I rushed towards the direction of Bai Xiaoyan Mountain Road. Chapter 10. A Wisp of Tai Chi Sword, the Great Master of Zhenzhen. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. A Wisp of Tai Chi Sword, the Great Master of Zhenzhen. Xianxian Peak is not far from Bai Xiaoyan's mountain path, and in just a stick of incense, Wang also arrived not far from the mountain path. I saw a beautiful figure in green clothes confronting two gloomy old men in the mountain path. The murderous aura emanating from those two old men was truly the same as the two great masters that Wang also sensed. This gun has such a strong malevolent aura. Wang also frowned slightly, looking at the woman holding a long gun and couldn't help but frown slightly. This gun is truly a soldier of 100 battles. Only after slaughtering countless lives can it emit this kind of substance like evil energy. But the woman in front of her was in her 20s, and even if she had been killing since birth, it was impossible for her to accumulate such terrifying evil energy. This woman is not the original owner of this gun. Wang also had a guess in his heart. He had been practicing Taoism in the mountains for more than 10 years, and he rarely heard of things in the martial arts world. But what he can be certain of is that the original owner of this gun must be a remarkable figure. Wait, no. Wang also seemed to suddenly realize something. Dressed in green clothes by Xiaoyan's younger sister just went up the mountain. Wang also murmured somewhat incredulously, "Isn't this the fiancée of the poor Taoist?" The woman on the mountain path was dressed in a blue and vigorous outfit, with slightly thin jade cheeks and a tingling aura. But at this moment, what sets the woman in stark contrast to her stunning and captivating appearance, resembling that of a banished fairy, is her imposing demeanor. Like an incredibly sharp sword, its sharp edge is hard to conceal. Surprisingly, it is the cultivation of the pseudo-master realm above the innate level. Wang Ye's eyes were somewhat surprised. At the age of 20, reaching such a level was already 1 out of 10 terrifying talents. What puzzled Wang even more was that his senior brother said his fiancée was the adopted daughter of Lord Wuan. Why did Wuan Jun's adopted daughter have such cultivation, and what happened to the long spear in her hand? Thinking of this, Wang was not in a hurry to appear. Although he saw the 2 senior brothers Yu Lianzhou and Mo Xinggu lying on the ground, Wang also observed their breath. Although their internal injuries were severe, their lives were safe. After the war, as long as either he or his senior brother Song Yuanxiao takes action, the 2 senior brothers can recover as before. At this time, the king also fell into a dilemma. If he doesn't show up, relying on his green clothes as a pseudo-master of martial arts, he won't be a match for the 2 opposing masters, but if he were to appear, he might be certain of this cause and effect. It's really troublesome. Wang couldn't help but feel a headache. However, at this moment, the beautiful figure in green clothes in the valley unexpectedly welcomed her with a long spear in hand. The marksmanship of Qingyi, with its wide opening and closing, is not like the moves practiced by women. On the contrary, it is unparalleled in killing and attacking. It is probably only those who have stepped on the mountains and seas of corpses that can create such a marksmanship. The inheritance of this girl is extraordinary. Wang also had a sharp eye and could tell at a glance that the Qingyi spear technique was not bad. This marksmanship is actually focused on killing, completely abandoning defense, and taking action is a desperate battle. You little lady, you have earned some points from the true legend of Wang Xiu. Crane Penwen laughed heartily, and after a few moves, their martial brothers also tried the depth of the woman in front of them. The Wang family gun of this woman in green has been passed down to the real world, but unfortunately, it is not up to some time. If given another 20 years at most, today the 2 elders of Xuanming ask themselves that they are no match. The 2 elders of Xuanming exchanged a glance, and with a movement of their feet, a ghostly figure suddenly appeared in front of Qingyi. They each slapped each other, and the extremely cold air in their palms surged. Qingyi had no choice but to raise his gun to fight, but only stopped the Crane Penwang, who was slapped on the shoulder by the nearby Dear Wan guest. In a moment of shock and silence, Qingyi only felt the cold and gloomy air corroding her bones. She immediately took a few steps back, and a mouthful of fresh blood stained Qingyi red. Qingyi. Bai Xiaoyan was shocked. He couldn't have let go of his green clothes and the 2 Wudang Taoist priests to escape, but the confrontation at this level was far beyond his understanding. Apart from being anxious in his heart, he was also helpless for a moment. Don't worry, brother. If these 2 old demons want to kill you today, you need to go through Qingyi first. Qingyi was stunned and stood on the ground with a spear, and a hint of determination flashed on her stunning face. Suddenly, both the elder Xuanming and Wang Ye, who was secretly watching the battle not far away, could feel that the aura on the woman in green had suddenly changed. A terrifying aura rose up from the sky, and at this moment, the green clothes and green threads danced wildly. The silent spear shot out horizontally, like the killing god wandering out of the sea of blood. The two elders of Xuanming immediately exclaimed in surprise and took several steps back. That move! This woman wants to use 100 birds to face the phoenix. Although Wang in the distance did not know what technique this 100 birds facing the phoenix was, he could understand just by looking at the aura on Qingyi's body. This technique was a desperate move that burned his entire body's qi and blood, at the cost of consuming his life. This move is really a life-for-life exchange. If we only attack but not defend, there is still a slight possibility of fighting against the great master. Wudang.Tai Chi, my fiancée is a lunatic, isn't she? Wang was also shocked and stunned. This crazy woman was willing to sacrifice her life and fight against the two great masters in front of her. Helpless, the king didn't have time to think much, so he had to bend his finger and flick the sword. A mysterious and endless sword intent suddenly burst out. Buzz! However, the sword intent of Wang Yi did not go towards the two elders of Xuanming, but directly entered the heart of the eyebrows in Qingyi. Sword intent entered the body, and in an instant, the slightly reddened fundus of Qingyi's eyes faded. The dancing green silk drooped its shoulders again, and the extremely terrifying evil energy dissipated in this moment. A mysterious and wonderful feeling is also surging into the heart of Qingyi at this moment. Wang's gun, the art of killing and attacking. She used to hate her father who had gone crazy and slaughtered the whole family. Just then, she seemed to have entered a terrifying state of completely losing her rationality. Now, thinking about it, she still felt a sense of fear, almost lost in that terrifying evil energy. But for some reason, there seemed to be an inexplicable aura that calmed her mind again. What made Qingyi feel even more inexplicable was that this aura was vaguely familiar. Looking at the Jing spear again, it is even more sharp than before. Qingyi's expression stiffened, her stunning cheeks as cold as frost. Although everything that happened to her was inexplicable, she would not miss this opportunity. The sword intent that came from an unknown source happened to help her suppress these two old demons. Shocking silence, the gun comes out, moving like thunder. This shot is extremely sharp, even carrying a terrifying sword intent that is both gentle and strong. This sword symbolizes the interplay of yin and yang, with infinite mystery. Two sword energies, one black and one white, unexpectedly wrapped around the tip of the Jing spear and rushed towards the two elders of the Xuanming world. Seeing the terrifying sword intent, the two elders of Xuanming trembled uncontrollably. In the distance, Zhao Min's expression also changed. Although she was a princess, she had always yearned for the world since childhood. How could she not know that the two sword energies of yin and yang were too well known in the Song dynasty's martial arts world, and even in the entire world? Since the day of his birth, he has been so oppressed in the Song dynasty that he has been unable to hold his head high for over a decade, and the name Zhang Sanfeng is well known throughout the world. It is not an exaggeration to say that one is invincible for a while. The meaning of Tai Chi sword. Did Zhang Sanfeng take action? That old Taoist hasn't died yet.